Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sleep Seas. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Perhaps you've had a long day, or maybe you're someone who finds comfort in drifting to sleep with stories of the ocean and the remarkable creatures that call it home. Either way, this evening's journey is for you. You have nothing to do but rest. Let your shoulders drop, your breathing slow, and your mind wander to distant shores where black and white birds waddle across ice and dive beneath waves with impossible grace. Tonight we're traveling to meet the penguins, not the cartoon characters or the tuxedoed symbols you might know from greeting cards, but the real animals, living their real lives in some of the most extraordinary places on Earth. These are birds who have forgotten how to fly, but learned something perhaps more remarkable: how to soar through water instead of air. They are parents who fast for months to protect a single egg. They are divers who plunge deeper than seems possible on a single breath. They are survivors in places where few other creatures can exist. We'll explore their hidden lives together, from the frozen vastness of Antarctica to tropical islands near the equator, from the surface of the sea to depths measured in hundreds of meters, from the moment an egg is laid to the day a young penguin takes its first swim. Some of what you hear tonight might surprise you. Some might simply help you drift more peacefully towards sleep. But all of it is true, drawn from the patient observations of scientists who have spent years watching these birds, learning their patterns, decoding their calls. Before we begin, if you find these ocean stories soothing, consider subscribing so you won't miss future journeys. And if you're still awake, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Now let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let the day fall away, and let's meet the penguins. When most people picture a penguin, they see a single image: black back, white belly, perhaps some yellow accents on the head. But penguins come in many forms, each adapted to its particular corner of the southern hemisphere. There are 18 recognized species, though some scientists argue for a few more, and they vary in ways that might surprise you. The smallest is the little penguin, sometimes called the fairy penguin or the little blue penguin. These birds stand only about 30 to 33 centimeters tall, roughly the height of a standard ruler, and weigh just over 1 kilogram. They live along the coasts of Australia and New Zealand, coming ashore at dusk with their blue-gray plumage glowing softly in the fading light. They nest in burrows and rock crevices, spending their days at sea hunting small fish and squid in the temperate waters of the southern Pacific. At the opposite end of the spectrum stands the emperor penguin, the largest of all penguin species. An adult emperor can reach heights of 115 centimeters and weigh anywhere from 22 to 45 kilograms. These magnificent birds live only in Antarctica, breeding on the sea ice during the darkest, coldest months of the year, when temperatures can plunge to minus 40 degrees Celsius and winds can exceed 140 kilometers per hour. They are built for extremes, with thick layers of feathers and fat, and a body shape designed to conserve heat. Between these two extremes exist 16 other species, each occupying its own ecological niche. The king penguin, second in size only to the emperor, stands about 90 centimeters tall and displays brilliant patches of orange and gold along its neck and head. These birds breed on sub-Antarctic islands, forming colonies that can number in the tens of thousands. Their breeding cycle is unusual, taking about 14 months to complete, which means they cannot successfully raise a chick every year. The macaroni penguin, named for its distinctive yellow crest that resembles the flamboyant hats worn by 18th century dandies, is one of the most numerous penguin species. These birds breed on rocky slopes and cliffs throughout the sub-Antarctic, their loud braying calls echoing across the landscape. They dive to depths of 70 meters or more, pursuing krill and small fish through the cold southern waters. Gentoo penguins are notable for their white stripe across the top of their head, connecting above their eyes like a bonnet's ties. They are the fastest underwater swimmers among all penguins, capable of reaching speeds of 36 kilometers per hour when pursuing prey. They build nests from stones, and pairs can often be seen engaged in what looks like stone stealing from neighbors, though this is actually part of their bonding behavior. The crested penguins form a group that includes the royal, macaroni, erect-crested, and several species of rockhopper penguins. All share the distinctive feature of yellow or orange plumes extending from their eyebrows, giving them a perpetually surprised or fierce expression. The rockhopper penguins got their name from their habit of hopping from rock to rock rather than waddling, using both feet together to bound up steep cliff faces to reach their nesting sites. Perhaps the most unlikely penguin is the Galapagos penguin, the only species that lives north of the equator. These birds exist in a place where you would never expect to find penguins, the volcanic islands of the Galapagos archipelago, where the equatorial sun beats down and marine iguanas sun themselves on black lava rocks. But the cold waters of the Cromwell Current, upwelling from the deep ocean, make life possible for these birds. They are small, standing about 50 centimeters tall, and they have adapted their breeding schedule to be flexible, nesting whenever conditions are favorable rather than following a strict seasonal pattern. The African penguin lives along the coast of South Africa and Namibia, the only penguin species that breeds on the African continent. These birds are sometimes called jackass penguins because of their loud, donkey-like braying calls. They nest in burrows dug into layers of accumulated seabird droppings called guano. Though human harvesting of this guano for fertilizer has forced many to nest in the open, making them more vulnerable to predators and heat. Each penguin species shares certain fundamental characteristics. All are flightless birds, their wings having evolved into powerful flippers used for swimming rather than flying. All have dense, waterproof plumage that traps air for insulation and provides streamlining in the water. All are counter-shaded, with dark backs and light bellies, a coloration pattern that provides camouflage both from above and below when they're swimming. Predators looking down see a dark back that blends with the deep water. Predators looking up see a light belly that disappears against the bright surface. But within these shared features exists remarkable diversity. Some penguins nest in burrows, others on open ice. Some form colonies of millions, others nest in scattered pairs. Some can dive to extraordinary depths, others rarely go below 30 meters. Some mate for life with the same partner. Others choose a new mate each season. The penguin family has radiated into every available niche in the southern hemisphere's marine ecosystems, from the ice shelves of Antarctica to the temperate shores of New Zealand, from the windswept islands of the sub-Antarctic to the surprising warmth of the Galapagos. This diversity speaks to millions of years of evolution. Penguins are thought to have diverged from flying birds about 60 million years ago, not long after the extinction of the dinosaurs. In that time, they have become supremely adapted to life in the ocean. Their bones are solid rather than hollow, providing ballast for diving. Their vision works equally well in air and water, a rare adaptation. Their feet are set far back on their bodies, perfect for steering underwater, but resulting in that characteristic upright waddle on land. The varied habitats where penguins live have shaped not just their physical forms but also their behaviors. Antarctic species must cope with extreme cold and long periods of darkness. They have developed extraordinary fasting abilities, social behaviors like huddling to share warmth, and precise timing to ensure chicks are old enough to survive when conditions improve. Temperate species face different challenges: higher predation pressure on land, greater risk of overheating, and the need to avoid competition with marine mammals that hunt the same prey. Understanding this diversity is essential to appreciating penguins as the complex, adaptable animals they truly are. They are not simply cute birds in tuxedos. They are survivors, hunters, parents, and ocean dwellers who have mastered some of the planet's most challenging environments. As we continue our journey tonight, we'll explore the remarkable abilities and behaviors that allow these birds to thrive where they do. From the frigid waters of the Antarctic to the surprisingly warm shores where some species make their homes. If you were to watch a penguin on land waddling with its ungainly gait or hopping clumsily over rocks, you might wonder how this bird could be considered graceful. But the moment a penguin enters the water, everything changes. The awkward walker becomes an underwater acrobat, a creature so perfectly adapted to its aquatic environment that it seems to belong more to the sea than to the air. Penguins are pursuit predators, hunting fish, squid, krill, and other marine creatures by chasing them down in open water. To do this effectively, they have evolved into some of the most accomplished divers in the animal kingdom. The emperor penguin holds the record for depth among all birds, having been recorded diving to depths exceeding 550 meters, more than half a kilometer beneath the surface. A dive logged in 2013 showed an emperor staying underwater for more than 32 minutes on a single breath of air, the longest recorded avian dive ever documented. How do they achieve such feats? The answer lies in a suite of remarkable physiological adaptations that allow penguins to extract and manage oxygen with extraordinary efficiency. Before a penguin dives, its heart rate actually increases, and the bird begins to hyperventilate, loading its blood and tissues with oxygen. Once underwater, the heart rate drops dramatically. In emperor penguins, the resting heart rate of about 72 beats per minute can plummet to as low as 6 beats per minute during a deep dive, and in some cases even to 3 beats per minute. This dramatic bradycardia conserves oxygen by reducing the metabolic demands of the heart itself. Penguins store oxygen in 3 main reserves: the lungs, the blood, and the muscles. Their blood has high concentrations of hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. Their muscles are rich in myoglobin, another oxygen-binding protein that provides a reserve supply during dives. When a penguin descends, blood flow is redirected away from less essential organs and concentrated on vital systems like the brain and heart. The penguin essentially shuts down non-essential functions to extend its time underwater. But this strategy has limits. After about 5 minutes underwater, emperor penguins cross what scientists call their aerobic dive limit. At this point, the muscle oxygen reserves become depleted, and the birds must switch to anaerobic metabolism in some tissues. This produces lactate, the same substance that causes burning sensations in human muscles during intense exercise. When the penguin surfaces, it must quickly replenish its oxygen stores and flush out accumulated lactate. Remarkably, emperors can recover from even their longest dives in just a few minutes, breathing rapidly at the surface before plunging down again. The diving behavior of penguins is precisely calibrated to the depth and duration of each hunt. On the way down, penguins actively swim, using powerful strokes of their flippers to descend through the water column. The flippers act like wings, providing thrust through the water much as wings provide thrust through air. The upstroke and downstroke both generate power, unlike flying birds where most power comes from the downstroke alone. This makes penguin swimming remarkably efficient. On the return journey to the surface, many penguin species employ a different strategy. Once they've completed their hunting and begin ascending, they stop swimming actively and instead allow their natural buoyancy to lift them toward the surface. But they don't shoot straight up. Instead, they ascend at an oblique angle, moving upward and forward simultaneously. This slows their ascent rate and increases the time they spend in shallow water, which may help them avoid decompression sickness, the condition known as the bends that affects human divers who surface too quickly. Different penguin species dive to different depths depending on their prey preferences and body size. Smaller species like Adelie and chinstrap penguins typically dive to depths of 30 to 60 meters, staying down for 2 to 3 minutes. These shallow dives are sufficient for catching the krill and small fish that form the bulk of their diet. King penguins, which are larger and hunt bigger fish and squid, regularly dive to 200 to 300 meters, with some dives exceeding 400 meters. The deepest divers are the emperor penguins. These birds forage in the waters beneath the Antarctic sea ice, pursuing Antarctic silverfish, glacial squid, and other deep-water prey. Their dives average between 150 and 250 meters, but they are capable of going much deeper. The record dive of 550 meters took the penguin to depths where the pressure is 55 times greater than at the surface, where darkness is absolute, and where temperatures hover just above freezing. How can a bird see to hunt in such conditions? Penguin eyes have evolved several special adaptations for underwater vision. Their corneas are flattened compared to those of terrestrial animals, which reduces the refractive power lost when light passes from water into the eye. Their lenses are extremely spherical and can change shape to compensate, allowing penguins to focus clearly both in air and underwater. King penguins have an additional adaptation. Their pupils can change size by a factor of 300, the greatest pupil size change of any bird. This allows them to gather maximum light in the darkness of deep dives while protecting their eyes from bright sunlight at the surface. Penguins often hunt in coordinated groups, particularly in areas where prey is abundant. Groups of Adelie penguins have been observed synchronizing their dives at the surface, with all members of a small group entering the water together. While underwater, individuals may spread out and hunt independently, but they surface at approximately the same time and wait for all group members to return before diving again. This behavior is thought to reduce predation risk. Leopard seals and other predators find it harder to target individuals when many penguins enter and exit the water simultaneously. The hunting itself requires precision and speed. When pursuing fish, a penguin must anticipate the prey's movements, adjusting its trajectory through three-dimensional space. The flippers provide both propulsion and fine steering control, while the feet and tail act as rudders. Penguins can pivot rapidly, turn on a pinpoint, and accelerate from gliding to active pursuit in an instant. Gen 2 penguins, the fastest swimming penguins, can reach bursts of speed up to 36 kilometers per hour, fast enough to overtake most fish. When capturing prey, penguins use their bills as tools. The inside of a penguin's mouth is lined with backward-pointing spines called papillae. These spines, made of keratin like the bill itself, help grip slippery fish and squid and guide them toward the throat. Penguins catch their prey whole and swallow it underwater, storing it temporarily in an enlarged esophagus called a crop before digesting it later, or during breeding season, regurgitating it to feed their chicks. One of the most remarkable recent observations of penguin behavior came from Antarctica, where juvenile emperor penguins were filmed diving from a 50-foot ice cliff into the ocean. Normally, young penguins fledge by simply walking from the sea ice into the water, a gentle transition from land to sea. But in this instance, climate conditions had left the colony breeding on a tall ice shelf rather than low sea ice. When it came time for the juveniles to enter the ocean for the first time, they faced a sheer drop of more than 15 meters. What happened next? Astonished researchers. The young penguins didn't hesitate. One by one, they walked to the edge and plunged off, some diving headfirst, others tumbling awkwardly, some seeming to slip and fall. They hit the water with tremendous impact, yet nearly all survived. Their small size, thick layer of belly feathers, strong breast muscles, and the air trapped in their plumage all likely helped cushion the landing. Within seconds of hitting the water, they surfaced, shook themselves off, and swam away. It was a remarkable demonstration of penguin resilience and adaptability. Throughout their lives, penguins spend almost as much time in the water as on land. Many species spend 75% or more of their lives at sea, coming ashore only to breed and molt. In the ocean, they can travel vast distances. Some emperor penguins wearing satellite tracking devices were found to travel over 2,600 kilometers during their winter foraging period, though they rarely strayed more than 130 kilometers from their breeding colony. They moved back and forth along the continental shelf break, following the movements of their prey through the dark winter waters. The ocean is not just a hunting ground for penguins, it is their primary habitat, the place where they are most truly themselves. On land, they are vulnerable, clumsy, constrained by gravity and the limitations of their body design. In water, they are transformed. They are fast, graceful, efficient predators, perfectly adapted to pursue and capture their prey in the three-dimensional space of the ocean. When you watch a penguin swim, you are watching millions of years of evolution in action, seeing a bird that gave up the sky to master the sea instead. In the crowded chaos of a penguin colony, where thousands or even hundreds of thousands of birds gather to breed, where the air fills with a cacophony of braying, trumpeting, and squawking, where every bird looks nearly identical to every other bird of its species, how does a parent find its chick? How does a mate recognize its partner? The answer lies in one of the most sophisticated communication systems in the bird world, the unique individual vocalizations that allow penguins to identify one another by sound alone. Every penguin has its own distinctive voice. To human ears, the calls might sound similar, but to penguin ears, each call is as recognizable as a human face. Research has shown that penguin vocalizations are individually identifiable, carrying unique acoustic signatures that allow mates to recognize each other and parents to identify their offspring even in colonies of hundreds of thousands of birds. This is particularly crucial for species like emperor and king penguins, which do not build nests or maintain fixed territories. Without a specific location to return to, these birds must rely entirely on vocal recognition to reunite with family members. Penguins produce three main categories of calls, each serving a distinct purpose. The contact call is used to recognize and maintain communication with colony members. These calls say, in essence, "I'm here, where are you?" The contact calls of emperor and king penguins are especially powerful, audible from distances of up to 1 kilometer across the ice. When a parent returns from a foraging trip and approaches the colony, it begins broadcasting its contact call, and somewhere in that vast crowd, its mate or chick hears that specific voice and begins responding. The display call is the most complex vocalization penguins produce. These calls are used between partners in the colony and convey multiple layers of information simultaneously: territorial boundaries, sexual availability, and individual identity. Display calls often accompany physical displays, with the bird stretching upward, extending its flippers, and pointing its bill skyward while producing an elaborate sequence of sounds. In African penguins, the display call sounds remarkably like a donkey's bray, which is why these birds are sometimes called jackass penguins. The threat call is the simplest and most direct vocalization. It's used to defend territory, warn off intruders, and alert other colony members to danger. Threat calls are typically harsh, short, and aggressive in tone. When two penguins dispute over a nesting stone or a boundary, their exchange of threat calls can escalate into physical confrontation, with birds pecking and striking each other with their flippers until one backs down. But penguin communication goes beyond these three basic categories. King penguins have developed what scientists call a two-sound system. When calling to their chicks in the middle of a huge, noisy colony, king penguin parents emit repetitive vocalizations using two different frequencies simultaneously. The bass frequencies travel effectively through the wall of bodies between parent and chick, cutting through the ambient noise of the colony. The chick can recognize its parent's unique call pattern from just the first quarter second of sound. Once it hears that familiar voice, the chick begins responding, and when parent and chick are within about 11 meters of each other, they can locate each other through this acoustic exchange. Penguin chicks have their own vocalizations distinct from adults. African penguin chicks emit two types of begging calls. Begging moans are short vocalizations, usually emitted in sequence until the chick is fed, accompanied by head bobbing. Begging peeps are higher pitched and shorter, but can continue for several minutes. Chicks begin using begging peeps at about 3 months of age, while moans, which sound more like adult calls, become more common as chicks grow older. These begging calls serve to stimulate the parent to regurgitate food. The acoustic structure of penguin calls is remarkably complex. Studies using spectrographic analysis have revealed that penguin vocalizations contain multiple layers of information encoded in different acoustic parameters: frequency, duration, rhythm, harmonic structure, and amplitude modulation. A single emperor penguin call might last 1 to 2 seconds but contain enough unique acoustic information for that bird to be identified reliably by its mates and offspring. Recent research has discovered something even more fascinating. African penguin vocalizations follow linguistic rules similar to those found in human language. They obey Zipf's law of brevity, which states that more frequently used words tend to be shorter. In penguin calls, the most commonly used vocal units are indeed the briefest. They also follow the Menzer-Altman law, which describes how as sentences get longer, the words within them become shorter. In penguin vocalizations, as call sequences get longer, individual syllables become shorter. These patterns suggest that penguins have evolved communication efficiency similar to what we see in human language. Male and female emperor penguins have measurably different call structures, and research indicates these differences likely function in courtship and mate selection. When choosing a partner, penguins may assess the quality of potential mates partly through their vocalizations. The ability to produce a strong, complex call might indicate good health, adequate body condition, and genetic quality. The physical mechanism penguins use to produce these calls is their syrinx, the bird equivalent of the mammalian larynx. Unlike the larynx, which sits at the top of the trachea, the syrinx is located where the trachea splits into the two bronchi leading to the lungs. This position allows birds to produce two different sounds simultaneously, one from each side of the syrinx. Penguins exploit this capability to create their complex two-frequency calls. In Gentoo penguins, which are generally more peaceful than other species, but also more vocal and noisy, the courtship calls are particularly elaborate and intense. These calls can continue for several consecutive days as pairs form and strengthen their bonds. The male typically initiates calling, performing an ecstatic display with wings outstretched and head thrown back, producing a loud sequence of sounds that advertises both his presence and the location of his nest site. Communication in penguins extends beyond vocalizations. Body language plays an equally important role. Penguins combine vocal and visual signals, typically emitting vocalizations while simultaneously making body movements. A posture or movement of the head, neck, or wings accompanies each major vocalization type. When two penguins perform a mutual display, they face each other, extend their necks upward, and call in unison, sometimes for several minutes. This dual display of sight and sound reinforces their pair bond and advertises their partnership to the rest of the colony. The importance of individual recognition in penguin society cannot be overstated. In emperor penguin colonies where neither mate nor chick has a fixed location, vocal recognition is not just useful but absolutely essential. A male emperor who has been incubating an egg for 65 days while fasting must be able to recognize his mate's voice when she finally returns from the ocean. The female, carrying a belly full of food for their newly hatched chick, must be able to identify her partner's call among thousands of others. Failure of recognition would mean the death of the chick and the waste of an entire breeding season. The sophistication of penguin vocal communication reveals these birds to be far more complex than their simple appearance might suggest. They navigate intricate social networks, maintain long-term partnerships, and coordinate parental care, all through an elaborate system of unique individual voices, complex calls, and coordinated displays. In the din of a penguin colony, what sounds like chaos to human ears is actually an organized conversation, thousands of individual voices each carrying specific messages to specific receivers. It is a language without words but full of meaning, evolved over millions of years to solve the specific challenges of penguin life. Penguins are among the most social of all birds. They live, breed, and often forage in groups, sometimes forming colonies so vast that they can be seen from space. The largest penguin colonies can number in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of individuals, creating sprawling cities of birds that cover hundreds of square kilometers of coastal terrain. These rookeries, as breeding colonies are called, are one of nature's most impressive gatherings, places where the air thrums with constant noise and movement, where the ground is covered with birds as far as the eye can see. The formation of these colonies is not random. Penguins return year after year to the same breeding sites. Locations that offer specific advantages: proximity to reliable food sources, protection from storms, relatively flat ground for nesting, and freedom from terrestrial predators. Some penguin colonies have been used continuously for thousands of years, their occupation marked by layers of accumulated guano and the gradual modification of the landscape by generation after generation of birds. When breeding season begins, penguins undergo a remarkable transformation from ocean-dwelling hunters to land-based parents. For many species, this transition starts with a long journey from the sea to the breeding colony. Emperor penguins may walk 50 to 120 kilometers inland across the sea ice to reach their traditional breeding sites. Adelie penguins navigate using the sun as a compass, adjusting for its changing position throughout the day. The journey is arduous, but it leads them to the place where they were likely born, the colony where they will attempt to breed. The first to arrive are usually the males. They stake out nesting territories, or, in the case of species that don't defend territories, establish themselves in the colony and begin advertising for mates. This advertisement takes the form of the ecstatic display, one of the most characteristic penguin behaviors. The male stands upright, tips his head back, extends his flippers outward, and produces a loud, complex call. The exact form of this display varies by species. Some include head swinging, some involve rapid alternating movements, some are performed sitting while others standing, but all serve the same purposes: to establish possession of a nest site, to warn other males away, and to attract females. When females arrive, they assess potential mates. In most penguin species, it is the female who chooses the mate, not the other way around. She may visit several males, evaluating their displays, their nesting sites, and their physical condition before making her choice. Some species show strong site fidelity and mate fidelity. Gen 2 penguins repair with the same mate 90% of the time, if both partners survive to return to the colony. Chinstrap penguins repair 82% of the time, while Adelies repair about 62% of the time. Emperor penguins, by contrast, are serially monogamous, faithful to one mate for a single season, but usually choosing a new partner the following year. Once a pair forms or reforms, they engage in elaborate bonding rituals. These mutual displays are crucial for establishing and strengthening the partnership. Partners face each other, mirror each other's movements, and call in unison. They may engage in mutual preening, gently grooming each other's feathers, particularly on the head and neck where a bird cannot easily reach itself. This preening serves both practical purposes, maintaining feather condition, and social ones, reinforcing the pair bond and reducing the instinctive aggression that might arise when another penguin comes very close. In some species, nest building is an important part of courtship. Adelie, Gentoo, and chinstrap penguins build nests from small stones, carefully arranging perhaps 100 pebbles in a shallow bowl shape. The male often presents stones to the female as a courtship gift, and the exchange of stones becomes part of their bonding ritual. These stone nests serve an important function. They elevate the eggs above the ground surface, providing drainage when snow melts and protecting them from meltwater that might otherwise flood the nesting area. Penguins will steal stones from neighboring nests, leading to constant low-level disputes in the colony, though these thefts may also serve as a form of social bonding. Temperate and tropical species often nest in burrows or under vegetation rather than on open ground. Little penguins dig burrows in soft earth, or nest in rock crevices and caves. African penguins traditionally nested in burrows dug into deep layers of guano, though human harvesting of this guano for fertilizer has forced many pairs to nest in shallow scrapes or under bushes, increasing their vulnerability to heat and predators. Magellanic penguins nest in burrows up to 2 meters deep, which they dig themselves or take over from other animals. Emperor and king penguins, remarkably, do not build nests at all. They breed on the surface of sea ice or on flat, open ground, and they do not defend fixed territories. Instead, the egg is balanced on the tops of the parent's feet and covered by a loose fold of abdominal skin called the brood patch. This pouch keeps the egg warm and protected from the elements. Without nests or territories to anchor them, emperor pairs must rely entirely on vocal recognition to stay together. Courtship in penguins often includes a behavior called mutual walking, or the courtship walk. Partners walk together around the nest site or through the colony, with one following closely behind the other. This behavior is most elaborately developed in emperor penguins, where pairs may parade together for extended periods, but other species also practice it. The walks appear to serve bonding purposes, strengthening the partnership before the intensive demands of egg-laying and incubation begin. Immediately before mating, many penguin species perform what's called the embrace. The male stands behind the female and gently taps or strikes her sides with his flippers while leaning forward and nibbling at the feathers on her neck. This is an invitation and a signal. If the female accepts, she crouches low to the ground and the male mounts her back. Copulation in penguins is brief, lasting only a few seconds, and maintaining balance is challenging, which is why the preliminary courtship behavior is so important for establishing trust and coordination between partners. The timing of breeding varies by species and location. In Antarctica, Adelie penguins breed during the Antarctic summer, laying eggs in November and December when conditions are warmest. Emperor penguins do the opposite. They breed during the Antarctic winter, laying their eggs in May or June, timing the breeding cycle so that chicks fledge in the summer when food is most abundant. King penguins have the longest breeding cycle of any penguin, taking about 14 months from egg laying to chick fledging, which means successful pairs cannot breed every year. African and Humboldt penguins, living in temperate climates, may breed at any time of year, though many populations show peak breeding seasons. Colony synchrony is a remarkable feature of penguin breeding. Within any given colony, most pairs lay eggs within a narrow time window, sometimes just a few weeks. This synchrony is thought to provide several advantages. It may reduce predation by overwhelming predators with more prey than they can consume during the vulnerable chick-rearing period. It allows for the formation of chick creches, where young birds huddle together for warmth and protection, and it ensures that all chicks fledge at approximately the same time when conditions are optimal. Life in a penguin colony is far from peaceful. With so many birds packed into close proximity, disputes are constant. Birds argue over nesting stones, over boundaries, over accidental intrusions into personal space. Threat displays, pecking, and flipper strikes are common, yet serious injuries are rare. Most disputes are resolved through ritualized displays of aggression rather than actual combat. A penguin will face an intruder, raise its flippers, point its bill at the threat, and produce harsh calls. This is usually enough to resolve the dispute. If not, brief physical contact follows, but prolonged fighting is unusual because it wastes energy both birds need for breeding. The crowding also facilitates social behaviors. Penguin colonies buzz with constant interaction. Birds greeting partners, parents feeding chicks, youngsters playing together, adults preening each other. In emperor penguin colonies during the dark Antarctic winter, male penguins engage in one of nature's most remarkable examples of cooperation: huddling. Thousands of males, each balancing an egg on his feet, packed together in tight formations to share warmth. The birds on the windward edge gradually work their way toward the center of the huddle where temperatures are warmest, while those in the center slowly spiral outward. The entire mass rotates slowly over hours and days, ensuring that every bird gets time in the warm center and that no bird remains exposed to the wind for too long. Without huddling, individual males would burn through their fat reserves too quickly and would abandon their eggs before the females returned. The colonies themselves are not permanent structures, but they endure across generations. Young penguins, when they reach breeding age at 3 to 6 years old depending on species, typically return to the colony where they hatched. They learn the route, the landmarks, the specific location through an imprinted map formed during their first weeks of life. This philopatry, as it's called, ensures that successful breeding sites continue to be used, but it also means that colonies are vulnerable. If conditions at a colony site change, if sea ice patterns shift, if food supplies move, if human disturbance increases, the penguins may struggle to adapt because their instinct draws them back to that specific place. In recent years, scientists have discovered that penguins are more flexible than once thought. When conditions become truly untenable at one site, some species will relocate to more favorable locations. Emperor penguins tracked with satellite devices have been observed moving to different colonies when sea ice conditions prevented access to their traditional site. This adaptive flexibility may become increasingly important as climate change alters the Antarctic environment. The courtship and colony life of penguins reveals them to be sophisticated social animals with complex behaviors, long-term partnerships, and elaborate communication systems. The rookeries where they gather are not just breeding grounds but social hubs, places where bonds form, where young birds learn the behaviors they will need as adults, where the patterns established over thousands of generations continue to play out each breeding season. Standing in a penguin colony is like standing in a city, surrounded by the noise and bustle of thousands of individuals all pursuing their own lives while simultaneously participating in the collective life of the community. Of all the challenges penguins face, perhaps none is more demanding than raising their young. Penguin chicks are born completely dependent, unable to regulate their body temperature, unable to feed themselves, vulnerable to predators and weather. To survive, they require constant care from both parents for weeks or months. The level of parental investment penguins provide is extraordinary, involving long fasting periods, exhausting commutes between colony and ocean, and continuous protection and provisioning of offspring. Penguins are, in every sense, super parents. Most penguin species lay 2 eggs per clutch, though emperor and king penguins lay only 1. The eggs are large relative to the parent's body size, and producing them requires significant energy investment, particularly from the female. In emperor penguins, the female transfers the newly laid egg to the male with great care, rolling it onto his feet where it will rest in his brood pouch. If the egg touches the ice for more than a few seconds, it will freeze and die. The transfer is a delicate operation, and not all pairs succeed on their first attempt. Incubation duties vary by species. In most penguins, both parents take turns sitting on the eggs, with shifts lasting anywhere from a few hours to several days depending on how far they must travel to feed. In Adelie penguins, the male typically takes the first incubation shift because the female has just expended enormous energy producing the eggs and needs to replenish her body reserves. She returns to sea, feeds intensively for 1 to 2 weeks, and then returns to relieve her mate. After that, shifts alternate every few days. Emperor penguins have the most extreme incubation strategy. The male alone incubates the egg for the entire 65 to 75 days it takes to hatch. During this time, he does not eat at all. He stands on the ice through the darkest, coldest months of the Antarctic winter, balancing the egg on his feet, participating in the slowly rotating huddles of males that allow each bird to periodically reach the warm center of the group. By the time the egg hatches, the male emperor has been fasting for about 120 days. From the time he arrived at the colony through courtship, egg laying, and incubation, he may lose up to 20 kilograms of body mass, nearly half his initial weight. When the female emperor returns, drawn to the colony by the lengthening days and her internal biological clock, she must locate her mate and chick among thousands of males. She broadcasts her unique call, and her partner responds. Their voices guide them to reunion. If the female arrives before the egg hatches, the pair performs another careful egg transfer so she can take over brooding. If the chick has already hatched, the male has one final remarkable adaptation. Even after months of fasting, he can produce and secrete a protein-rich substance from his esophagus to feed the newly hatched chick for a few days until the female returns with actual food. When chicks first hatch, they are tiny. Emperor penguin chicks weigh only 150 to 200 grams, while their parents weigh 22 to 30 kilograms. The chicks have only a thin layer of down and cannot regulate their own body temperature. For the first 50 days of life, emperor chicks must remain in the parent's brood pouch, warmed by contact with the parent's bare brood patch. During this vulnerable period, chicks can die within minutes if exposed to the Antarctic cold. Both parents feed the chick by regurgitating partially digested food directly into its mouth. This process is remarkably precise. The parent lowers its head, opens its beak, and the chick reaches up and inserts its smaller beak inside. The parent then brings up food from its stomach, and the chick swallows it. Penguin chicks are insatiable, begging constantly for food whenever a parent is present. The energy demands of growth are enormous, and chicks can gain weight rapidly when food is abundant. Parent penguins recognize their own chicks by their unique calls. Even in colonies of hundreds of thousands where all chicks look superficially similar, adults reliably find and feed only their own offspring. This specificity is crucial because feeding a non-related chick would waste resources that should go to one's own genes. King penguin parents can identify their chick's voice from just the first quarter second of its begging call, allowing them to locate their offspring quickly in the chaos of the creche. As chicks grow, they develop thicker down and eventually gain the ability to regulate their own body temperature. At this point, they no longer fit comfortably in the brood pouch, and the parenting strategy shifts. The chicks are left alone for increasingly long periods, while both parents simultaneously forage at sea to meet the growing energy demands of their rapidly developing offspring. To survive this period alone, chicks gather together in groups called creches. Creches were once thought to be communal nurseries where multiple adults cooperatively guarded and cared for the young. Research has shown this is not the case. Parents feed only their own chicks, and adults do not cooperatively guard creches. Instead, creches form because huddling provides thermoregulation benefits and because there is safety in numbers. A predator approaching a creche of 500 chicks is overwhelmed with options and less likely to successfully target any individual chick than if chicks were scattered and alone. The parental provisioning period varies greatly by species. Little penguins provision their chicks for about 50 days. Adelie, chinstrap, and gentoo chicks fledge at 60 to 70 days old. Emperor penguins provision their chicks for about 150 days, and king penguins hold the record. They continue feeding their offspring for 10 to 13 months, through an entire Antarctic winter. King chick development includes remarkable weight fluctuations. Chicks balloon to their maximum weight at about 4 months old, building substantial fat reserves. During the winter, when their parents' foraging trips become longer and less productive, the chicks lose weight, surviving on stored fat. A second weight peak occurs around 10 months, and finally the chick is ready to fledge. The final phase of chick development involves learning to swim and hunt. For most penguin species, this transition happens abruptly. Adelie and chinstrap chicks fledge in a mass exodus, walking or tobogganing en masse to the water's edge and plunging in for their first swim. They receive no additional parental care and must learn to hunt entirely on their own. Many do not survive this critical period. Gentoo penguins have evolved a different strategy. They practice delayed dispersal with extended parental provisioning. Gentoo chicks make their first trips to the sea at about 70 days old, but these are just practice runs. The chicks swim for a short time, then return to the colony. Over the next 2 weeks, they make approximately 5 trips to the water, each time returning to the colony where their parents continue to feed them. This extended provisioning allows the chicks to gradually develop their hunting skills while still receiving food from parents, improving their chances of survival after full fledging. Galapagos penguins show an even more extreme version of this strategy. In seasons when food is abundant, parents have been observed continuing to feed fully fledged offspring who have left the nest and can swim independently. This post-fledging parental care is extremely rare in penguins, but makes sense given the unpredictable food availability in the Galapagos, where El Niño events can cause sudden crashes in marine productivity. Penguin parents face numerous challenges beyond simply providing food. In emperor penguin colonies, researchers have documented a behavior called chick napping. Adults who have lost their own chick or egg but who still have high levels of prolactin will sometimes attempt to kidnap another pair's chick. The kidnapper may carry the chick away from its true parents, but because the adult cannot produce food and the chick does not recognize the kidnapper's call, these adoptions almost always end badly for the chick. Most adoptions last less than a day, and only about 2% become long-term. The behavior appears to be a maladaptive result of the strong parental drive that normally ensures chick survival. True adoption, where a chick is successfully raised by non-biological parents, is rare but has been documented. In one remarkable observation in the Falkland Islands, an older Gen 2 chick was recorded multiple times regurgitating food and feeding its younger sibling, a behavior never previously witnessed in penguins. This suggests that the parental drive, once activated, can sometimes be directed towards siblings or other related individuals. The investment penguins make in their offspring is a calculated evolutionary gamble. Unlike rabbits, which can produce multiple litters of many offspring per year with minimal parental care, or sea turtles, which lay hundreds of eggs and provide no parenting whatsoever, penguins produce very few young and invest enormous resources in each one. This strategy only makes sense because their environment is so challenging that young penguins would have almost no chance of survival without intensive parental care. By investing heavily in one or two chicks, parents maximize the probability that at least some of their offspring will survive to adulthood and eventually breed themselves. The devotion penguins show to their young fasting for months, diving to extreme depths hundreds of times per day to bring back food, defending chicks against predators and storms, teaching them gradually how to enter the water and hunt fully justifies calling them superparents. Few animals endure such hardships or provide such intensive care for their offspring. In the harsh environments where penguins live, this extraordinary parental investment is not optional. It is the only strategy that works. A penguin's most distinctive feature is its plumage, the sleek black and white coloration that makes these birds instantly recognizable. But penguin feathers are far more than decorative. They are an engineering marvel, a complex system that provides waterproofing, insulation, camouflage, and hydrodynamic efficiency, all simultaneously. Penguins have more feathers than most birds. While many bird species have between 4,000 and 10,000 feathers, penguins can have more than double that number. Emperor penguins possess up to 70 feathers per square inch of skin, giving them one of the highest feather densities of any bird. These feathers are not randomly distributed. Unlike most birds, whose feathers grow in distinct tracts with featherless gaps between them, penguin feathers cover the skin continuously, with no bare patches. This complete coverage provides superior insulation. The structure of penguin feathers differs from that of flying birds. Each feather is short, stiff, and somewhat flattened, quite unlike the long, flexible flight feathers of birds that fly. The feathers overlap like shingles on a roof, creating a smooth, streamlined surface. The barbs on each feather are closely linked together, and the downy after feathers at the base trap air next to the skin. This creates a layered system, an outer waterproof shell, and an inner insulating layer. Waterproofing is crucial for any bird that spends most of its life in water. Penguins achieve this through both feather structure and through the oil they spread on their feathers. At the base of a penguin's tail sits the uripygial gland, also called the prein gland. This gland secretes oil that is both water repellent and antimicrobial. Penguins preen constantly, using their bills to spread this oil across their plumage. A well-groomed penguin's feathers are so water repellent that water rarely touches the skin beneath. Preening is not just maintenance, it's a daily necessity and a time-consuming activity. Penguins may spend 3 hours per day preening, carefully going over each area of their body they can reach with their bill. They twist and turn, rub their bodies with their flippers, and work their bills through the feathers to ensure complete coverage with preen oil. In the water, penguins can be seen preening continuously, rubbing their bodies with their flippers while spinning and turning. Partners often preen each other, particularly on the head and neck where a bird cannot easily reach. This mutual preening serves both practical and social functions. The counter-shading pattern of penguin plumage, dark on the back and wings, light on the belly, provides camouflage in the ocean. Predators looking down from above see the dark back that blends with the dark water below. Predators looking up from below see the light belly that disappears against the bright surface and sky. This camouflage works both to protect penguins from predators like leopard seals and to make them less visible to the fish and squid they hunt. But penguin feathers do more than just waterproof and insulate. They also play a crucial role in swimming performance. When diving, penguins trap air bubbles within their feather layers. As they descend and pressure increases, these bubbles are compressed, making the penguin less buoyant. On the return journey, as pressure decreases, the bubbles expand, providing increasing buoyancy that helps lift the penguin toward the surface. Penguins can actually be seen trailing streams of tiny bubbles as they swim underwater, released gradually from their plumage. This air layer serves another function. It reduces drag. The bubbles create a layer of air between the penguin's body and the water, a phenomenon called boundary layer lubrication. This reduces friction and allows penguins to swim faster and more efficiently. The air release is carefully controlled, with more bubbles released during rapid swimming than during slow swimming. In essence, penguins are using their feathers as a system for managing buoyancy and drag, adjusting their swimming efficiency in real time. Temperature regulation is perhaps the most critical function of penguin plumage. Antarctic species must cope with air temperatures that can drop below -40 degrees Celsius and water temperatures near -2 degrees. To maintain their core body temperature of about 39 degrees, penguins must prevent heat loss. Their dense plumage provides excellent insulation, trapping a layer of air heated by the body. The thicker the plumage, the better the insulation. Emperor penguins have the thickest and densest plumage of all penguin species, an adaptation to their extremely cold environment. But overheating is also a challenge, particularly for species living in temperate or tropical zones. Penguins cannot sweat, and panting is not very effective because it leads to water loss. Instead, they regulate temperature by controlling blood flow to exposed areas. An overheated penguin will spread its flippers away from its body, allowing heat to dissipate from the relatively thin, unfeathered skin of the flippers. Adelie penguins have been observed with their white-colored flipper undersides turning pink when they overheat, as blood vessels dilate to increase heat loss. The feet are another area where penguins control heat exchange. On the ice, penguin feet would lose enormous amounts of heat if not for a clever adaptation called countercurrent heat exchange. Arteries carrying warm blood down into the feet run parallel to veins carrying cold blood back from the feet. Heat transfers from the arterial blood to the venous blood, warming the returning blood before it reaches the core, while cooling the outgoing blood before it reaches the extremities. This system minimizes heat loss to the ice while preventing the feet from freezing. Once a year, penguins undergo a complete molt, shedding their old feathers and growing a complete new set. This is an energetically demanding process, unlike many birds that molt gradually, replacing a few feathers at a time while remaining fully functional. Penguins undergo a catastrophic molt, where they lose most of their feathers over a short period. During the molt, their plumage is not waterproof, so they cannot enter the ocean to feed. They must fast until the new feathers have grown in completely, a process that takes several weeks. Before molting, penguins must build up substantial fat reserves to survive the fast. They feed intensively for weeks, sometimes nearly doubling their body weight. Then they come ashore, and the molt begins. Old feathers fall out in large clumps, leaving the birds looking ragged and unkempt, with patches of new feather shafts poking through the skin. The new feathers grow rapidly, and within 2 to 4 weeks, depending on species, the bird has a complete new coat of feathers and can return to the ocean. The coloration of penguin plumage includes more than just black and white. Many species have patches of yellow, orange, or gold. Emperor and king penguins display brilliant orange and yellow patches on their necks and heads. Macaroni and royal penguins have striking yellow crests. These colored patches are thought to play roles in mate selection and species recognition. King penguins have another unique feature. Their bills reflect ultraviolet light, invisible to human eyes, but clearly visible to other penguins. Male king penguins may use these UV-reflecting bills as signals during courtship, with the intensity of reflection indicating health or genetic quality. Penguin chicks have different plumage than adults. They are covered in thick, fluffy down feathers that provide insulation but are not waterproof. The down is typically brown or gray, sometimes with contrasting patterns. Emperor chicks have striking silver-gray down with distinctive black and white markings on the head, a coloration that may help adults locate chicks against the ice. As chicks approach fledging, they undergo their first molt, losing the down and growing their first set of waterproof adult feathers. Only then can they enter the ocean. The evolution of penguin plumage represents millions of years of adaptation to life in cold water. The ancestors of penguins were flying birds with typical avian plumage. As they adapted to an increasingly aquatic lifestyle, their feathers evolved to become shorter, stiffer, more densely packed, and more highly waterproof. The result is a plumage system unlike that of any other bird, a perfect compromise between insulation, waterproofing, and hydrodynamic efficiency that allows penguins to thrive in environments where few other birds can survive. Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, driest continent on Earth. Average temperatures inland hover around -57 degrees Celsius, and in winter they can plunge to -80 degrees or colder. Winds regularly exceed 160 kilometers per hour. The continent is essentially a vast desert, receiving less precipitation than the Sahara, though what does fall comes as snow. This is the environment where emperor and Adelie penguins have chosen to breed, one of the harshest places on the planet. How do penguins survive such conditions? Through an extraordinary suite of adaptations, both anatomical and behavioral, that allow them not just to endure but to thrive in extreme cold. The challenge is maintaining a core body temperature of about 39 degrees Celsius when surrounded by air and water that are 70 to 80 degrees colder. Heat loss in such environments would normally be catastrophic, but penguins have evolved multiple strategies to minimize it. The first line of defense is insulation. Penguin feathers trap air warmed by the body, creating an insulating layer. Beneath the skin lies a layer of fat up to 3 centimeters thick in some species, providing additional insulation and serving as an energy reserve during fasting. The combination of feathers and fat is so effective that an emperor penguin standing on ice in -40-degree temperatures maintains its core temperature with minimal increase in metabolic rate. Body shape also matters. Penguins have a compact, rotund body form that minimizes surface area relative to volume. The less surface area exposed to the cold, the less heat is lost. Emperor penguins are the largest penguins and have the most compact body proportions, an example of Bergmann's rule, which states that within a species or related group, individuals in colder climates tend to be larger. The emperor's body is nearly spherical when the feathers are fluffed, minimizing exposed surface area. Extremities, feet, flippers, and to some extent the bill pose a particular challenge. These parts cannot be as heavily insulated as the body because they must remain flexible and functional. Penguins solve this problem with countercurrent heat exchange systems. Arteries and veins in the flippers and legs run very close together, allowing warm arterial blood to transfer heat to cold venous blood returning to the body. By the time arterial blood reaches the feet, it has cooled to just above the temperature of the ice, preventing heat loss while keeping the feet from freezing. Behavioral adaptations are equally important. The most famous is huddling, the behavior unique to emperor penguins, where thousands of males pack tightly together during the winter incubation period. Within a huddle, the temperature at the center can be 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the outside air. Birds on the windward edge slowly move toward the center, while those in the center gradually work outward. The entire mass rotates slowly, ensuring no bird remains exposed for too long. Huddling can reduce each bird's metabolic rate by 25%, a crucial saving during months of fasting. Penguins also adjust their posture to conserve heat. They stand upright with their flippers pressed close to their body, minimizing exposed surface area. They may tuck their bills into their breast feathers. When resting, they may crouch low to reduce exposure. During storms, penguins turn their backs to the wind, presenting the smallest possible profile to the driving wind and snow. The ocean, counterintuitively, provides relief from the most extreme cold. While Antarctic seawater hovers around -2 degrees Celsius, this is actually warmer than the air temperature during winter. Adelie penguins have been observed entering the water during storms. apparently to escape the worst weather on land. The water may be cold, but it's less cold than the air, and penguins are perfectly adapted to function in it. Not all penguins face Antarctic conditions, but all species that live in cold environments employ similar adaptations. Penguins breeding on sub-Antarctic islands endure strong winds, heavy rains, and near-freezing temperatures. These birds face the additional challenge of staying warm while wet from rain rather than snow. Their waterproof plumage becomes crucial, shedding water and maintaining the insulating air layer beneath. At the other extreme, some penguin species face the challenge of staying cool rather than warm. African and Humboldt penguins live in relatively warm climates where air temperatures can exceed 30 degrees Celsius. Galapagos penguins breed at the equator, where intense tropical sun beats down. These birds cannot overheat because high body temperatures would damage their brains and other organs. To shed excess heat, warm climate penguins employ several strategies. They spread their flippers away from their bodies, increasing surface area for heat dissipation. Blood vessels in the flippers dilate, shunting warm blood to the surface where heat can radiate away. They pant, using evaporative cooling from the respiratory system. They seek shade, nesting in burrows or under vegetation to escape direct sunlight. They may enter the water frequently to cool off. Some species have evolved reduced feather density and less subcutaneous fat compared to their Antarctic relatives. Galapagos penguins have an additional adaptation. They hold their flippers out to shade their feet when standing on hot volcanic rock. They also reduce their activity during the hottest parts of the day, becoming more active in early morning and evening. Breeding is timed flexibly to avoid the hottest periods, and nesting burrows are chosen for their cooling properties. The range of temperatures penguins must cope with across their species is remarkable. From -80 degrees in the Antarctic interior to +35 degrees in the tropics, penguins span more than 100 degrees of temperature range. No other bird family occupies such extreme thermal environments. This adaptability speaks to the evolutionary success of the penguin body plan and physiology. Beyond temperature, penguins face other environmental challenges. Antarctic species endure months of continuous darkness in winter and continuous daylight in summer, requiring adaptations in their circadian rhythms and seasonal timing. They cope with dramatic seasonal changes in sea ice extent, which affects where they can breed and how far they must travel to reach food. They endure frequent storms with hurricane-force winds. They live in places with virtually no terrestrial food sources, depending entirely on the ocean for sustenance. Even the apparently simple challenge of moving around poses difficulties. Penguins on land are not graceful walkers. Their upright stance and posterior placement of feet make walking energetically expensive. On flat ice, they often prefer to toboggan, lying on their bellies and pushing with their feet and flippers to slide across the snow. This method is faster and more efficient than walking for long-distance travel. When crossing rough terrain or climbing, penguins use a combination of walking, hopping, and climbing with flippers, scrambling up slopes and obstacles that would seem impossible for such short-legged birds. The survival of penguins in extreme environments represents a triumph of evolution. These birds have pushed the boundaries of what's possible for warm-blooded animals, colonizing places where few other creatures can exist. They have done so not through a single adaptation, but through a complete package of anatomical, physiological, and behavioral specializations that work together to solve the challenges their environments present. The result is one of nature's most successful colonizations of extreme habitats. Penguin life follows rhythms, patterns that repeat daily, seasonally, and annually. These rhythms are driven by the needs of survival, finding food, avoiding predators, maintaining body condition, and successfully breeding. Understanding these rhythms helps reveal how penguins organize their time and energy across different challenges. At the most basic level, most penguins are diurnal, active primarily during daylight hours. This makes sense for visual predators who hunt in the ocean where light penetrates from above, but some species are active during twilight, or even at night. Little penguins, which nest in burrows, often return to shore after dark, slipping onto beaches under cover of darkness to reduce predation risk from gulls and raptors. Some deep-diving species like kings and emperors often continue diving well into twilight, taking advantage of prey that migrates vertically in the water column. The daily routine during breeding season revolves around the nest or chick. Birds that are incubating eggs or brooding young chicks remain at the nest site for extended periods, only being relieved when their partner returns from foraging. During chick rearing, once chicks are old enough to join creches, both parents may forage simultaneously. They leave the colony early in the morning, spend the day hunting at sea, and return in the evening to find their chick and regurgitate food. Foraging trips vary enormously in length. Some penguin species, particularly smaller ones breeding in temperate waters with nearby food sources, make trips lasting just a few hours. Parents may leave in the morning and return the same afternoon. Adelie penguins during peak chick rearing can make round trips to their feeding areas and back in 12 to 24 hours. At the other extreme, king penguins may embark on foraging trips lasting 2 to 3 weeks, traveling hundreds of kilometers from the colony to reach productive feeding areas in the open ocean. The duration of foraging trips is a critical variable in penguin breeding success. If trips are too long, chicks may starve waiting for their parents to return. If trips are too short, parents may not gather enough food to provision chicks adequately. Evolution has calibrated the breeding strategies of different species to match the foraging distances and trip lengths typical of their environments. Species living where food is close and predictable can rear 2 chicks successfully. Species living where food is distant or unpredictable often rear only 1 chick, or their breeding cycles are extended to allow for longer foraging trips. At sea, penguins must decide how to spend their time to maximize food intake while minimizing energy expenditure and predation risk. Diving is energetically expensive, particularly deep diving, which requires long descent and ascent times. Penguins must balance dive depth, dive duration, and surface recovery time to optimize their foraging efficiency. Too many short, shallow dives may not provide enough food. Too many long, deep dives may leave the bird exhausted. Time depth recorders attached to penguins have revealed their diving patterns in detail. Most species perform bouts of diving, with multiple dives in succession, followed by a rest period at the surface or on ice. Within a bout, dive depth and duration may vary as the penguin searches for and pursues prey. When prey is encountered, dive depths tend to become more consistent as the bird repeatedly returns to the same depth zone where food is located. Sleep is essential for penguins, as for all animals, but their sleep patterns are unusual. Unlike humans who typically have a single consolidated sleep period each day, penguins take multiple short naps throughout the day and night. These microsleeps last from a few seconds to a few minutes. Penguins may even sleep while floating in water, though whether they do so regularly is still debated. On land, larger species like emperors sleep standing up, while smaller species sleep lying down on their bellies or sides. During the breeding season, when birds are on nests, they sleep lightly, remaining alert for threats to their eggs or chicks. One remarkable recent discovery is that penguins may sleep thousands of times per day, with each sleep episode lasting only seconds. This strategy allows them to remain somewhat vigilant, even while resting, important in crowded colonies where threats from neighbors are constant. The cumulative time spent in these microsleeps adds up to several hours per day, apparently sufficient for their neurological needs. Seasonal rhythms are equally important. In Antarctica, the dramatic difference between summer and winter drives profound changes in penguin behavior. Summer brings abundant food, mild temperatures, and continuous daylight. This is when most species breed, taking advantage of favorable conditions. Winter brings darkness, cold, and reduced food availability. Many penguin species leave Antarctic waters entirely during winter, migrating north to sub-Antarctic zones where conditions are less extreme. Adelie penguins breeding in the Ross Sea undertake one of the longest migrations of any penguin, traveling up to 17,600 kilometers annually between breeding and wintering grounds. These tiny birds, weighing just a few kilograms, navigate across vast expanses of ocean to follow seasonal food availability. Young birds on their first migration must make this journey without guidance from adults, relying on innate navigational abilities. Not all penguins migrate. Emperor penguins remain in Antarctic waters year-round, though they move between breeding sites on fast ice and foraging areas in the pack ice and open ocean. Their breeding cycle is uniquely timed to winter breeding so that chicks fledge during the productive Antarctic summer when food is abundant. The timing of molt also follows predictable patterns. Penguins must molt on land because their plumage during molt is not waterproof, preventing them from entering the ocean to feed. They must therefore build up fat reserves before coming ashore, then fast for the 2 to 4 weeks required for the molt to complete. Most species molt after breeding, using the summer months when air temperatures are warmest. Some species that breed in extended cycles must molt before breeding, ensuring their plumage is in optimal condition before the breeding season begins. Annual rhythms are the longest cycles in penguin life. From one breeding season to the next, a penguin experiences the full cycle of life: pre-breeding fattening, courtship and pair formation, egg-laying and incubation, chick-rearing, post-breeding fattening, molt, and then a period of recovery and feeding before the cycle begins again. For emperor penguins, this cycle takes about 12 months. For king penguins, it takes 14 months, meaning successful breeders cannot breed in consecutive years. Within these cycles, penguins must constantly make decisions: when to dive, how deep to dive, when to return to shore, when to relieve their partner at the nest, when to leave the chick in a creche, when to stop feeding the chick and prioritize their own condition for molt. These decisions are not conscious calculations but instinctive responses calibrated by evolution to maximize lifetime reproductive success. The rhythms of penguin life are not rigid. Penguins show flexibility in response to changing conditions. When food is abundant, they can compress breeding cycles or add extra provisioning trips. When food is scarce, they may abandon breeding attempts, skip breeding seasons entirely, or adjust trip lengths to cope. This flexibility is crucial for survival in environments where conditions can change rapidly and unpredictably. Penguins have thrived for millions of years, adapting to changes in climate, sea levels, and ecosystems. But today they face challenges unprecedented in their evolutionary history. Of the 18 penguin species, 5 are listed as endangered, and several others are considered vulnerable or near threatened. The threats they face come primarily from human activities: commercial fishing, pollution, habitat destruction, and climate change. At sea, penguins face predation from leopard seals, sea lions, fur seals, and orcas. Leopard seals are particularly formidable predators of Antarctic penguins, patrolling the waters near colonies and snatching birds as they enter or exit the water. An individual leopard seal may consume dozens of penguins per day during the breeding season. Orcas hunt penguins in some regions, often working in coordinated pods to create waves that wash birds off ice floes into the water. On land, the threats vary by location. In Antarctica, where there are no terrestrial predators, penguin colonies are relatively safe once birds reach shore, but eggs and chicks are vulnerable to avian predators, particularly scores and giant petrels. These birds patrol colonies constantly, snatching unguarded eggs and attacking chicks that wander from their parents. Even a few seconds of inattention can result in a lost egg or chick. Outside Antarctica, penguins face more diverse terrestrial predators. In South America, foxes, feral cats, and rats prey on penguins, eggs, and chicks. In Africa, mongooses and various raptors hunt penguin colonies. In Australia and New Zealand, introduced predators including foxes, ferrets, stoats, dogs, and cats have devastated some colonies. Little penguins are particularly vulnerable because they nest in burrows that predators can easily access. But natural predation, though sometimes heavy, is something penguins have evolved with and can typically sustain. The modern threats are different and more severe. Commercial fishing competes with penguins for food. In the Southern Ocean, fishing vessels harvest millions of tons of krill annually, the primary food source for many penguin species. Antarctic krill populations have declined in some regions, forcing penguins to travel farther to find food or to switch to less nutritious prey. Overfishing of forage fish, small fish like anchovies, sardines, and sprats that form the base of marine food webs, affects penguin populations worldwide. When fish stocks collapse due to overfishing, penguins may struggle to find enough food to feed their chicks. Breeding failures can cascade across multiple years, leading to population declines. African penguins have experienced dramatic population crashes, declining from over 1 million pairs in the early 20th century to fewer than 42,000 pairs today. Overfishing is considered a primary driver of this decline. Bycatch, the accidental capture of penguins in fishing gear, kills thousands of birds annually. Penguins diving to feed can become entangled in nets and drown. They may also be attracted to baited hooks on long lines, swallowing hooks that kill them. Various mitigation measures have been developed, including bird-scaring lines that keep birds away from baited hooks and restrictions on net types and locations, but bycatch remains a significant problem. Pollution takes many forms. Oil spills can affect entire penguin populations when they occur near colonies. Penguins encountering oil lose the waterproofing and insulation properties of their feathers, leading to hypothermia and death. Even birds that survive initial exposure often die later from ingesting oil while preening or from the toxic effects of absorbed petroleum compounds. Major oil spills have caused mass mortality events in African penguin populations. Plastic pollution is a growing threat. Penguins may ingest plastic debris floating in the ocean, mistaking it for food. Plastic items can block digestive tracts, causing starvation. Microplastics consumed by fish and squid may concentrate in penguin tissues, though the long-term effects of this exposure are still being studied. Marine debris like fishing line and nets can entangle penguins, causing injury or drowning. Habitat destruction affects penguins on land. Coastal development destroys nesting sites. Tourism, though often well-intentioned, can disturb colonies, particularly during the sensitive breeding season when eggs and chicks are vulnerable. Even careful ecotourism can cause stress if penguins modify their behavior in response to human presence. Introduced plants can overrun nesting areas, and introduced animals can destroy habitat or prey on penguins. Perhaps the most pervasive threat is climate change. For Antarctic species, warming temperatures are melting sea ice, the platform on which emperor penguins breed and from which many species access their feeding areas. A 2008 study estimated that 50% of emperor penguins and 75% of Adelie penguins could decline or disappear if global average temperatures rise more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, a threshold we are approaching rapidly. The impacts of climate change extend beyond temperature. Changing ocean currents alter the distribution of prey species. Warming waters reduce the abundance of krill in some regions. Increased storm intensity can wipe out entire year classes of chicks. Changing sea ice patterns force penguins to travel farther to reach food or may prevent access to traditional breeding sites altogether. In recent years, multiple emperor penguin colonies have experienced catastrophic breeding failures when sea ice broke up early, drowning chicks before they could fledge. Yet penguins have shown remarkable resilience. The discovery of cliff-diving emperor penguins demonstrates their ability to adapt behavior to changing conditions. Colonies have been documented relocating to new sites when traditional locations become untenable. Some species show flexibility in diet, switching prey when preferred foods become scarce. Galapagos penguins time their breeding to current conditions rather than following fixed schedules, allowing them to cope with unpredictable food availability. Conservation efforts are underway for many penguin species. Protected areas have been established around key colonies. Fishing regulations have been implemented to reduce competition and bycatch. Rehabilitation centers rescue and treat oiled penguins, successfully returning many to the wild. Artificial nest boxes provided for some species have increased breeding success. Invasive predator control programs have helped restore colonies where introduced mammals had caused declines. Scientific research continues to expand our understanding of penguin biology, ecology, and conservation needs. Satellite tracking reveals migration routes and at-sea distribution, informing marine protected area design. Population monitoring helps detect declines early, allowing conservation interventions. Genetic studies reveal population structure and connectivity, important for managing species across their ranges. Public awareness and support for penguin conservation has grown. Penguins are charismatic animals that inspire affection and concern. This public support translates into funding for research and conservation, political will to create protected areas and implement regulations, and individual actions to reduce climate impacts and support conservation organizations. The future of penguins remains uncertain. Climate change projections suggest continued challenges ahead, particularly for Antarctic species dependent on sea ice. But penguins have survived for millions of years, adapting to massive changes in Earth's climate and ecosystems. They possess flexibility, resilience, and remarkable adaptations. With informed conservation efforts, reduced human impacts, and some fortune, many penguin populations may persist. What is certain is that penguins deserve our protection. They are unique creatures, birds that abandoned flight to master the ocean, parents that endure incredible hardships to raise their young, survivors in places where few other animals can exist. They are part of Earth's natural heritage, components of ecosystems that stretch across the southern hemisphere, living connections to evolutionary history that spans millions of years. Their continued existence depends partly on decisions we make now about how we interact with the natural world. We've traveled far tonight, across ice and ocean, from the equator to the poles, from the surface of the sea to depths measured in hundreds of meters. We've watched penguins court and pair, incubate eggs through brutal winters, dive into the deep to hunt, and raise their chicks against overwhelming odds. We've explored their remarkable adaptations, their complex social lives, their challenges, and their resilience. Penguins remind us that life finds ways to thrive in the most unlikely places. They show us that survival sometimes requires community, cooperation, and extraordinary parental devotion. They demonstrate that evolution can transform a flying bird into an underwater hunter, that adaptation can open doors to environments others cannot enter. They prove that even in the coldest, darkest, most challenging places on Earth, life not only persists but flourishes. These birds that waddle awkwardly on land but soar through water with impossible grace carry lessons for us. They show us the value of partnership, as mated pairs work together to raise their young. They show us the importance of perseverance, as males fast for months to protect a single egg. They show us adaptability, as colonies relocate when conditions change. They show us resilience, bouncing back from setbacks that would seem insurmountable. When you think of penguins now, perhaps you'll see more than the black and white cartoon characters of popular culture. Perhaps you'll see emperor penguins huddled against Antarctic storms, sharing warmth to survive the darkest months. Perhaps you'll see a king penguin parent calling across a colony of thousands to find its chick, recognition achieved through voice alone. Perhaps you'll see a gentoo penguin accelerating through water at speeds that seem impossible, pursuing prey with precision and grace. You might think of the little blue penguins of Australia, smallest of all, returning to shore at dusk after a day at sea. Or the Galapagos penguins, adaptable survivors on tropical islands where no penguin should be able to exist. Or the African penguins, whose populations have crashed by 99% in little more than a century, clinging to survival along the African coast. The ocean connects us all, and penguins are part of the same marine ecosystems that provide food, regulate climate, and support countless other species. What happens to penguins matters not just for them, but for the health of the oceans themselves. They are indicators of marine ecosystem health, their populations reflecting changes in prey availability, ocean temperatures, and environmental conditions. By protecting penguins, we protect the marine environments they depend on, and that we depend on as well. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you can imagine yourself standing on an Antarctic shore, surrounded by thousands of penguins going about their lives. You hear their calls echoing across the ice, see them sliding on their bellies across the snow, watch them porpoising through the waves offshore. The air smells of salt and seaweed and guano. The ice glows blue in the perpetual summer twilight, and you are witness to one of nature's great spectacles, a gathering of life in a place that seems inhospitable to life, proof that our world is full of wonders if we take time to look. The story of penguins is still being written. Their future chapters will depend partly on us, on the choices we make about climate, fishing, pollution, and habitat protection. But it will also depend on them, on their adaptability, their resilience, their ability to survive and even thrive in changing conditions. They have endured for millions of years. With care and with luck, they will endure for millions more. Thank you for joining me tonight on this journey to meet the penguins. I hope you found it peaceful, perhaps educational, maybe even inspiring. The ocean holds countless stories, countless remarkable creatures, and we've only touched on one tonight. But what a story it is. The story of birds who chose the sea, who mastered depths and cold, who gather in vast colonies and raise their young against all odds. If you enjoyed this evening's journey, consider subscribing so you won't miss future explorations. And sleep well, knowing that right now, somewhere in the southern hemisphere, penguins are diving through dark waters, calling to their mates and chicks, sliding across ice, and living their hidden lives in some of the most extraordinary places on Earth. Good night.